evening takes the hill first and then the road. Heat loosens its grip on the crown of packed earth and stone that runs from sea country to the king's inland city, and the surface gives back a smell of dust that has decided not to rise again until morning. In the shallow cuts where the road was set a little lower than the fields, tamarisk and wild fig keep a thin line of shade, even after the sun forgets them. The leaves hold a last warmth, the way a page holds a fading gloss. The mile-post-notched stones at the road's shoulder do not speak, but they count. Every few bowshots, a marker with a shallow groove in its face, tells a traveller what his feet already knew. Another parasang walked, another stage arranged. The grooves are worn where fingers have learned to land with the same curiosity: how far behind, how far ahead, and the answer is always enough. The road is not an argument. It is an agreement stretched across provinces like a calm cord. Close by one such stone, a relay house breathes out lamplight very cautiously. Low walls, a yard packed tight, a bar that will learn its slot at moonrise. A cistern under a lid keeps water that has been tired twice, once by travel, once by lifting, and so has become quiet. The keeper steps into the doorway with hands as empty as good manners. His robe carries the day's dust, but not its hurry. On a peg behind him hang lead seals strung on a thong, and a small bag of clay pellets kept damp under a shadda. Two ways the road remembers who touched what when. Farther along, the road crosses a causeway over a marsh that still believes it is an inland sea. Stones are set tight enough that wheels do not whisper, and loose enough that water can have opinions without winning. Guard cans at either end wear the day's heat like old helmets. A pair of soldiers share a shallow brazier with a patience that belongs to evening more than to men. They turn a skewered onion, not because they are hungry now, but because turning is how hours make sense. Nothing rushes, and yet the road is fast. The king's couriers, those whose belts carry the small badge that says, "I run for someone larger than myself," do not gallop through the dark. They trade. One horse for another, one pouch for a twin pouch, one receipt scratched on a wax tablet for the next neat line, one name spoken aloud by another mouth, so that names do not become strangers to themselves. In the relay yard, a horse that knows starting better than finishing stamps once at the scent of leather that means it is his turn. A boy checks the girth by fingers, not by pride, and the girth agrees. Messages tonight are many small things. One clay tablet wrapped in wool with a 3-line order about a fairy rope a priver replace. Do not patch. Set the peg deeper than last year's, sealed with a cylinder's parade of lion palm, and the little chevron that means the satrapy, with more sheep than stones. One folded leather slip for the quartermaster at a mountain fortrations for 10 men and 1 mule, counted for 7 days exactly. One length of knotted cord for long knots, 3 short carried for a foreman who remembers in hands better than in letters. None of these would make a trumpet sound. All of them will keep a village from discovering what happens when arrangements go hungry. Across the fields, the road shows its habits. Where rain becomes impatient, drains lead away under small arches. Where wind invents dunes, fences of brush persuade the sand to ask questions somewhere else. A bridge takes a dry gully in 2 stone sentences. On the parapet, circular sockets receive the rail that is set only when carts need teaching. When carts pass by night, axles wrapped in wool chew their complaints into a low hum that doesn't wake orchards. Lodgings for ordinary travellers cluster at the edges of the stations like parentheses. Reed mats on raised platforms keep backs from remembering stones. Braziers learn to be small and sufficient. A pot of barley and lentil remembers the difference between boiling and whispering. A caravan at its own speed pulls in a string of camels that fold their legs with the modesty of good furniture. Sacks of dye that smell of sea and wind. A bale of felt that sighs when set down. A merchant who has practiced the trick of making news sound like weather. He tells the keeper that a ford to the west prefers mornings now. The keeper puts a pebble in a bowl to remind his mouth to tell the next courier without making a ceremony of it. The king's road warden, one of the quiet men who count bridges, gates, and stone, sits with a board across his knees and a stylus that writes on wax. He checks the list he keeps. Drain at 3rd mile, cleared last month. Milestone at Poplar Bend, leaning a finger's width toward field. Shade tree planted at the long grade watered by the last 3 caravans without reminding. He is not a general. He is custodian of correctness. He oils the bar's socket with a drop of fat because wood likes to be remembered. Later, when the moon has decided how much to be involved, watch fires along the ridge do the work of eyes without the work of mouths. One flare at a distant post is not alarm. It is hospitality, a signal to a late rider that a pot is still warm and the gate will lift without questions larger than necessary. If 2 flares became 3, something else would happen, but tonight the count is polite. The stars above do their ancient accountant's work. The Pleiades rise a little later than last week, a little higher than last month. A mounted courier uses the square of Pegasus not as poetry but as clock. He adjusts his pace by the difference between shadow and sound, how far the horse's hoof is from the road. So he can arrive neither early enough to wake the yard nor late enough to teach the next horse to sulk. His breath matches the animal's. The pouch rests against his thigh like a thought that has chosen forward. Inside the relay house, the keeper keeps 2 registers. One for the things that travel and one for the things that do not. The travel register has lines for pouches, seals, hours, names, and the direction of dust east or west because dust is an honest witness. The house register has lines for oil, barley, straw, shoe nails, and the condition of the bars. He adds a line about the drip that began near the cistern, lip at sunset, and promises to persuade it out of memory at dawn with a little lime and a lot of attention. A cat with a piece of the road's independence sits exactly where a saddle wants to be set, and so it is moved gently and immediately. A lizard that has learned the night's temperature watches from between two stones. A jackal writes his signature once across the dust and chooses the lane that does not think to lead anywhere and therefore leads everywhere. The road itself has manners. It enters villages at the edge and not the middle. It skirts fields by straightness where straightness is kinder, and by curve where curve keeps water where water belongs. When it must climb, it climbs diagonally, so the pull is a lesson, not a test. Where it descends, it gives ridges to the foot and gaps to the wheel. Men who built it left their names nowhere and their reasoning everywhere. Close to midnight, the relay house becomes still enough to take its own pulse. The yard smells of sweat that has already decided to be salt by morning. Leather that has chosen supple over speech. Lamp oil that knows it will be coins again at dawn. The keeper sets the bar into its socket with a sound that says kept, not shut. The seal cords on their peg did not move. The clay pellets in their jar did not dry. The list on the wax did not grow proud. When light returns, nothing dramatic will happen. A horse will be led forward that knows starting better than finishing. A new pouch will be tied to a strap with a knot that forgives a tug but resists everything else. A lead seal will press and cool. A clay impression will harden to the exact truth of who and when. The cistern's lid will lift the width of a hand. The milestone will greet a fingertip. The road will choose forward, because forward is the habit that keeps provinces related without raising anyone's voice. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. A relay house keeps speed the way a cistern keeps water by holding. From the road, it looks like a thought drawn low. A square yard, a lean-to for shade, a door that knows its socket, and a lamp that prefers to be a coin instead of a sun. A shallow trough along one wall remembers day-cool water, a pile of lucerne the green the Greeks learned to call. Persian waits under red matting, where the air passes and the flies do not. Inside, stalls stand shoulder to shoulder, not grand, only correct. Manger boards rubbed smooth by lips. Hitch rings that do not squeal. A floor strewn with chopped straw that takes hoof and gives it back. Nicean morays broad in the chest, slow to panic, belong to the house. Fresh-legged geldings wait behind them, already half asleep with the talent horses are born knowing. Every fourth stall holds a mule because the road believes in choices. Leather hangs from pegs the way a sentence hangs from grammar headstalls. Bits soft fleece girths that won't teach saws, pickets for the night. The keeper keeps 2 ledgers in his head and 2 on wood. The head ledgers are hay and water. The wood ledgers are names and hours. A shaving of wax smoothed with the heel of his hand becomes a day. Rider from Sadi 2nd hour after sunset. Pouch received, seal sound, mount exchanged, left after 2 ladles and a strap check. A nick on the board means east wind. A small cut across the nick means dust. Later, he will copy this into the neat, narrow letters on a tablet and let the wax forget. Wax is allowed to forget here. People are not when a rider comes. The house does not wake, it arranges. Toof to yard, yard to hand, hand to strap. A boy takes the pouch by its ring, never by the leather, and sets it on the stone shelf that holds seals and water the way a threshold holds feet and opinions. The keeper reads the disc of lead with his thumb more than his eyes, because thumbs were the first readers. He nods. The pouch rests. The rider steps down, not to rest, but to exchange breath. A cup for him, a ladle for the horse, each tipped with the patience that keeps lungs from arguing with ambition. Across the stable, tack is a quiet alphabet. Pads of felt that remember backs, breastbands that stop saddles from wanting downhill, throat latches that believe in moderation, a small jar of oil for the places where leather and metal must decide to get along. Each piece has a peg and each peg has a place. A peg out of place is as loud as a shout in this room. A farrier's bench keeps the kind of iron the road hopes not to need. His hammer hits the anvil like a polite knock once to remind the nail it is a nail, twice to make the hoof and the shoe agree. Horses are not hurried, they are rehearsed. Before a mount steps into the yard, a groom runs a hand along the jaw where salt dries. Fingers follow the fetlock to find heat that would make a mile become an error. A palm checks the belly for the places girths learn to sulk. A thumb turns the frog of the hoof to see if mud chose to become a habit. A brush flicks dust where dust offends. A damp cloth smooths where hair has decided to have an opinion. Then the saddle pad, first breath, then tree, girth an inch more only after a walk. Girths taught in a hurry punish later. The house prefers law to punishment. In the corner, a water clock keeps nothing but enough the float climbs a reed. The reed moves a thread. The thread guides a pointer past, scratches that mean the difference between good and careless. At each drop, the world becomes slightly more arranged. Past the door, a pole with a shallow shadow notch tells the night when midpoint has gone and when toward dawn begins. The keeper trusts the shadow in summer and the water in winter. He trusts both more than stories. A courier's exchange is a dance with 4 hands. The fresh horse steps forward. The worn horse steps aside. The strap crosses. The pouch ring clicks. The not the forgiving one that opens when it should and never when it shouldn't remembers its shape. The rider slips the new headstall over a head that already knows the game, tests the bit with a finger. Because metal lies if you don't ask, and sets his weight like a breath on the pad, not like an argument. No one shouts now. The whole yard whispers already. Sometimes the pouch is not alone. A short stick wrapped with a narrow strip of dyed cloth a pass. The road's little letter for a person rides in the rider's belt. It buys gates at hours, when gates would rather be philosophy. It makes fords polite and ferries attentive. It tells a watch that the man with the jar and the woman with the child are not a question, only a crossing. The keeper sees the colour and does the arithmetic that gates like to see done. 2 people, 1 donkey, 1 basket, 1 hour. He makes a mark so the past can explain itself only once. The store for fodder is a book of smells. Barley thinks of rain in a place where rain does not think of barley often enough. Chopped straw thinks of roofs and then agrees to be food. Lucerne thinks of mountain valleys where water arranges itself over summer and arrives by bundle bound with the knot that lovers and grooms both use because it is patient. A bale is opened long ways so the leaves remember their shape. A measure is scattered, not piled. Teeth are asked to make choices, not mistakes. At the back wall, a lamp shelf keeps 5 dishes and 1 pin. The pin trims the wick to coin size. A coin is the unit of light that stables light. Soot prefers to choose the other shelf where it lives under a shard until it is ground with gum to make someone else's ink. The lamp shelf's law is written in the thickness of oil. 1 spoon for trade horses, 2 for a messenger, 3 for a storm. The keeper has broken this law only twice in a year. Both times the storm apologized by morning. A road scribe comes through every 3rd day, feet dusty like truth. He copies the wax into clay when clay is wanted, presses a small buller over a cord when the cord must remember who it is married to, and rolls a cylinder whose parade is a lion with modest teeth and a palm that never tries to be taller than it is. He does not count animals, he counts agreements. He leaves with a pouch lighter than the one he brought because certainty weighs less than doubt. There is a sound this house loves, the settle. A fresh horse takes the first 50 steps. The rider shortens the rein by a barley grain. The horse drops into a gait that believes in provinces. Another sound is the return. A ridden horse drinks, breathes down, puts one hind foot forward to make the back long and the neck soft, and learns to chew at the bit without thinking. A boy picks up the droppings with a reed scoop because flies learn rules too. From time to time, the keeper performs a ritual he never writes down. He lifts the bar out of its groove, turns it in his hands, looks for the polish that shows obedience, finds the dry, that hints at complaint wipes with oil and sets it back so the night will make its small wooden word toke the proper hour. Bars that don't learn their hour teach worry to everyone within hearing, and worry is slower than any horse. When rain remembers these hills, the road changes mood without changing rules. Boots come in with edges of mud that want to become clay. A mat waits to teach them the difference. Axles are wrapped in wool so they can be brave without boasting. The yard's drainer run off flat stones with ideas about slope takes, the brown away from hooves and toward the ditch that belongs to after. A groom hangs a wet pad on a peg out of reach of the donkey who believes salt is his religion. If trouble presents itself, it never gets a chair. To horse, off his feed, gets his pulse counted at the jaw and under the tail. A felt pad warmed near a lamp becomes medicine. A little barley water with a trace of salt makes an argument with thirst end without speeches. A shoe that thinks about leaving is spoken to with 3 nails and the calm side of the hammer. A strap that forgets itself is mended with a thong cut from the quietest part of an old rein. No heroics, only arrangements. Between exchanges, the house practices stillness. The cistern lid is allowed a tilt the width of a finger, so the water can think. The cat checks the grain room and announces the dawn in her own grammar when it happens. A jackal laughs at something no one else applied for. The keeper leans his back against the cool of the yard wall and recites the list of bridges ahead by habit, not need. 2 stone, 1 wood, both in manners. His lips stop moving when he is finished. He does not look proud. The wall does that part for him. When the sky chalks a line between night and morning, the house opens its palm and finds what it always finds. A strap that remembers its knot. A pouch that remembers its seal. A horse that remembers forward. A yard that remembers dust without making mud of it. A trough that remembers water without forgetting air. The boy brings the first ladle. The keeper's wife sets barley to soak for porridge and for beasts. The bar waits to be lifted, which is the best thing bars do. Out on the road, the milestone accepts a fingertip and gives back distance without opinion. The new mount steps away with yesterday's confidence and none of yesterday's tired. The rider does not ask for speed, he asks for pace. Pace answers in the key of done. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The road does not trust memory alone. It prefers marks that harden. On the relay shelf beside the water jar sits a shallow tray of clay pellets under a damp shard. Each pellet is the size of a large bean, kneaded until it stops arguing, waiting to become a bula small promise that learns to keep itself. Next to them, a thong threads a dozen lead seals, their faces milled to take impressions without pride. Clay is for near, lead is for far. Both agree on truth. When a pouch arrives, the keeper does not open it. He reads it with his thumb. The stamp on the lead king's bow-winged disc. The little wedge that means this satrapy and no other. The cord clean through the leather, the not the forgiving kind that only forgives when asked. A smear of soot on the cord at the entry hole tells him nobody practiced curiosity with a needle. The soot ring sits unbroken, a little halo that would have complained if it had to move. A new packet is made the way a jar is sealed for the winter. The keeper wraps the letter in oiled linen, not tight, just honest. Ties a cord knotted twice once for the road and once for the room it will sleep in at the other end. He presses a pellet of clay around the knot while it is still thinking. The clay takes the fingerprint of the room and then forgets the finger. A cylinder seal hematite, cool as river stone rolls once. King with bow attendant, a cypress that never tries to be taller than it is. The parade survives better on clay than in air, when the packet must ride farther than the season, or over regions where rain thinks it is authority, the keeper chooses lead. A small disc with a slits oft enough to obey, stiff enough to remember clips over the cord, but a punch whispers tack. Letters appear dister for the road office, the month, the number of the station. Lead learns dates well, clay learns hands well. Between them, route and responsibility share the load. Passes are the road's letters for people. They begin as strips of rawhide dried flat, rubbed with oil so they won't quarrel with weather, and pierced for a cord. The keeper writes with a stained stylus that makes dark scratches. Bearer and one beast. 1 hour at gates. Water at troughs. Reason, sick child. Over the scratches goes a skinny clay bulla pressed with the relay house seal. If someone elsewhere has to look twice in the rain, the texture will speak where ink cannot. At the next house, the pass receives a second bulla, then a third. A garland of seals grows. Nobody reads the words anymore. They read the journey. Not everything is paper and clay. Some things are wood and wax. The keeper diptychs 2 little boards, hinged by cord opens, to a soft wax face scented faintly of honey past. He writes hours, winds, and the direction of dust east going, west going, with a bronze point that likes restraint. When the page is full, he warms the blade, smooths the day back into readiness, and starts again. The only thing that remains is what moved from wax to clather to tablets that matter. Pouch in pouch outteach with their envelope, each with a summary on the outside in case tomorrow needs to be quick. In the Satrap's Road office, 2 stages away, the shelves keep twins, a register in ink for eyes and a bundle of sealed bulla for fingers. The clerk turns the bulla in a bowl-smooth river stones of clayon till he finds the one whose edge nick matches today's page. He does not break it. He places it in a shallow tray labelled with the station's small sign. If a question ever walks in wearing boots, a finger can answer it without waking the tongue. Seals have manners beyond the image. They expect clean clay, not dusty, firm pressure, not zeal, a single roll, not scribbling. A boy who is learning presses twice and sees the design double. The keeper smooths it with a wet thumb and shows him the weight in the wrist that makes clay behave. In a corner, a shard holds 3 bad impressions as a lesson. Too dry, too wet, too proud. Tomorrow the shard will go back to the road with the sweepings, and even the mistake will carry dust where dust belongs. When grain travels, it travels counted. Each sack wears a clay tag-pierced oval. Still a little damp when it left the store impressed with the measure so many homers, the field, the ditch with the tamarisk, the destination barracks, bakery, temple oven. The tag is tied to the mouth by a cord threaded through, not around. If someone unties the mouth without consent, the clay cracks like a small truth telling itself. A baker receiving sacks at moonrise reads with fingers, not with guesswork, and signs the receipt with his own sealer cluster of dots in a ring, humble and sufficient. The Rhodes Chester cedar box with iron corners is a room that travels. Inside, folded into felt, lie the house seal, the spare cylinder, a ring seal for emergencies, a lead die, a small knife, and a string of samples. 1 clay bulla kept from each month, dry as wisdom. A list in the lid names the pieces. When the keeper travels to the satrapy office once in a year, the chest rides beside him and no conversation is required. The chest speaks with weight and with the smell of cedar that makes moths consider other careers. There are tricks for thieves that think themselves clever. A cord can be plied 2 strands twisted opposite ways, so that cutting and rejoining turns the lay wrong, and a thumb feels the lie. A bulla can be dusted with fine sand while soft. If someone presses a different seal over a lifted one, the grit makes scratches that a clerk will not forgive. A knot can be tied over a reed sliver. Pull the knot and the sliver breaks where it cannot be replaced without threads admitting they were wrong. These are not challenges. They are manners taught to mischief. Sometimes secrecy is not the need. Order is a courier carries 4 tokenswood discs, scarred with simple marks to hand, to 4 ferrymen, who keep a string through their sleeves so tokens never learn to be lost. No writing, no seal. Only a count that puts labour into the hands it belonged in. The ferryman returns the disc at night to the keeper who hangs it on a peg and hears the faint clack that means balanced. When a dispute arrives, rare small sleep-hit sits on the bench with its hat in its hands. The pouch says the seal is right. The clerk says the hour is wrong. The keeper pours bulla into a wooden sieve, shakes once, and what he needs stays, while the rest return to being companions. He finds the bulla with the tiny flaw near the god's elbows, the flaw that the house seal has had for as long as anyone remembers and smiles. The hour is the clerk's misread. The seal was always here. A line of apology enters a small book. A fig and a joke leave by the door. The iconography is quiet theology. On the satrap's ring, the archer king draws a bow that is always drawn just enough. On the road, seal a wheel that never turns but suggests that turning exists. On the grain stores, seal a sheaf tied low so heads won't break. On the baker's seal, a circle with 4 lines, because bread is pieced before it becomes share. No one kneels to these images. They recognize them the way the hand recognizes the handle of a door it has loved for years. Even voices have seals. A messenger who cannot write carries a message stick. A length of tamarisk with notches burned and cut deep for 10 shallow for 1. Angled for owing square for paid. A notch near the butt for now near the tip for later. The receiving foreman has the mate stick. When the notches meet like teeth and the ends sit flush, the agreement is congruent. No bulla, no lead, and yet a kind of fitting that even darkness can read. At the larger station by the river, the ceiling table stands under north light, so shine does not lie. A trough of slip-thin clay sits to wet, dry bulla back into listening. A brush of reed ties smooths tiny edges. A sandbox takes the gloss after fingerprints, so nothing smears into less than true. A clerk uses a straight edge to push fresh seals into tidy lines on a tray. If any tilt, he corrects them with the patience one gives to a child who is interested in walls. A cover of woven reed keeps flies away. A slab of stone keeps wind from practicing scholarship. At the end of a long week, the keeper opens the tin of failed bullas, the ones broken in teaching or saved for weather. He crushes them with a wooden pestle, adds a splash from the cistern, and the crumbs become a slip that mends the station. S owns small chips, a hairline in the cistern lip, a scuff in the doorframe, a nicey on the bar socket. Even the broken promises return as plaster, which is a decent afterlife. There is a reason the road sleeps well. Pouches carry felt confidence, not secrets. Bulla carry thumbs, not rumors. Lead discs carry place, not noise. If anything breaks, the pieces tell on each other. If anything is lost, the register appears like a parent and puts a hand on the day's shoulder. The road does not hope to be perfect. It hopes to be legible. When a courier rides out after midnight, the new seal cool against the back of his hand, he does not think of empires. He thinks of stages, the bridge with the two sockets, the poplar that learned wind, the causeway where the marsh resigns. The pouch rides at his thigh, light with distances that have already kept themselves. In the relay yard behind him, a boy wipes the cylinder seal with a damp cloth and returns it to its box, the box-size cedar, and shuts it. In the morning, the satrap S-clerk will take a tray of last night S-bulla to the shelf and add one reed slip in red. Counted, found correct. The day's first bulla will be made from clay that was once error, now usefulness. The first lead disc will press its certain wheel. The first pass will collect its second seal on its way to being believed by strangers. Fingers will read, chords will resist, knots will forgive, and names will arrive at the right rooms without stories needing to be told. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. Roads do their best thinking when they are explaining water to itself. By day, the royal way shines a little where cartwheels polished its crown a gentle hump down the centre, so rain remembers the sides. By night, the same crown is only a feeling under a sandal, one finger higher than the verge, enough to make runoff choose quickly. On either edge, shallow ditches walk along like discreet companions, meeting at intervals with cross drains that slide beneath the roadway in little tunnels roofed with flat stones. They are not dramatic. They are decisions. A bridge comes where the land ran out of other ideas. Its piers are squat and honest, a heart of rubble tight with clay, faced with dressed blocks that were taught to sit without jealousy. Between the piers lie lintel slabs laid side by side, a line of patient backs, where a span grew greedy. The builders coaxed a low arch, not proud, just sure. Each wedged stone leans into its neighbour like a sentence that knows where it is going. The parapet rises the height of a man's hand and a half enough to keep carts from forgetting themselves, not enough to make the river feel fenced. At the north end, a flood mark is cut into a pier shallow notches that remember the year the water tried to be king and failed politely. Below, Cutwater's nose-shaped stones facing upstream divide. The current so driftwood chooses to think twice. A little chain of stone steps tucks into the bank. Jar-bearers use them at calm hours, and at bold hours they pretend not to exist. Moonlight pages through the water. The river reads bedtime slowly. Where the land is low and indecisive, the road invents causeway. Here, layers matter. Brush laid crosswise, then gravel, then fist-sized stone, then a skin of packed earth that accepts footprints without recording emotion. At the margins, wattle hurdles willow interlaced on stakes keep the causeway from daydreaming back into the marsh. Between hurdles, small culverts run under in a secret grammar. Water from east to west today, west to east in the year that decides so. The culvert's own stone lips. Lip means edge. Edge means slow. Slow means no surprise. High ground offers its own puzzles. Gullies cut by rain that arrived as guest and tried to stay as family. The road answers with little arches and lintel bridges. Their abutments terraced into the slope with retaining walls that step back like polite listeners. On the dry faces of those walls, a mason has scratched plumb lines with a nail when the stones were still learning to be straight. A thin wash of lime closes the dust and turns the wall the color of milk that learned restraint. The grade at Hills is a lesson, not an exam. Long diagonal ramp climbs with switchbacks that would have looked like calligraphy from a cliff. If anyone had leisure to hang off cliffs and judge, at each turn a water bar a shallow hump across the tractel's runoff. This way please, into a little pocket that spills down a safe cheek of the hill. Cart axles learn to climb with patience. Oxen learn to breathe at the same tree every evening. The tamarisk at the second bend wears a smooth scar where yokes remembered to rest. Drain mouths are talkative unless taught not to be. The road uses scupper square holes in parapet sand sluice slots, dressed with flat stones to keep edges from chewing themselves. Where dust blew in and began to call itself silt. Men came with drag boards planks, with ropes skimming the shallow ditches until the bottoms remembered slope again. The spoil goes to berms that strengthen verges and grow grass that lays dust without speeches. To broom of twigs leans at every relay house. At dawn, a boy walks the one parasang the house claims and talks to the ditches with the broom's soft grammar. In river towns where stone is a rumor and timber is truth, spans are crib bridges log frames filled with stone, decked with planks that offer their grain in the direction of traffic. Iron is rare. Pegs and swallowtail joints do the convincing. At flood season, the planks can be lifted by pairs and stacked under the eaves. The river takes the hint and finds mischief elsewhere. A chain of stones sunk upstream on ropes discourages entire trees from auditioning for the bridge. Water does not only come from above, it wicks from below. In salt-prone flats, the road puts on sandals, a bed of clean sand under the surface that tires water before it reaches clay. Over it, broken potsherds that once were jars makes, a layer that pretends to be rock until rock arrives. The crown above sheds what the sandals refuse. Wheel ruts try to form a man with a rake, and an ordinary temper persuades them into evenness before they become geographic. The road wardens keep their arithmetic on legs of stone and logs of wood. Their checklist fits in a hand. Ditch depth to knee. Scupper mouths free, parapet sound, stepstone at ford flush with bottom. They carry a cord knotted every cubit and a plum shaped like a short tear. Numbers enter wax only when wax wants them. Most days end with small ticks done beside small nounscape drain, lip peg. A week of ticks is a road that sleeps. At fords, the river and the road hold negotiations. A line of stepstones sits low enough that water forgets to argue, but high enough that wheels remember decorum. In spring, a rope crosses on stakes, loose enough to forgive, tight enough to teach. Beside the rope, a depth stick with honest notches stands like a sentry who never learns to shout. When the stick's fifth notch drinks, the fairy earns its day. Some drains learn perfume 1 month in 10. Upstream olive pressers argue with slope. The road S answer is settling pits. Square holes lined with stone where water sits and remembers to leave its oil and pulp behind. A sluice board pulls, the pit sighs, and the outflow wanders off clear enough to be called water again. A woman rinsing amphorae at the culvert's mouth does not bless anyone. She simply does not frown. Where a cliff leans too close, the road leads it elsewhere, with revetment's walls leaning into the hill, their stones set to batter back. Drain mouths pierce those walls on a rhythm every 30 paces, a small square that keeps pressure from learning ambition. Sometimes a weeper hulgus, a thumb width stops the face to let trapped damp become an idea instead of a crack. The wall thanks the hole by not remembering winter. The sound of all this is gentle. Water meeting stone with a small s, cart iron humming on planks, a rake combing gravel into corrected lines, a man tapping a parapet blocked in good, thud to be mended. Where bitumen belongs low valleys, Mesopotamian reach the joints, where a dark gloss that refuses seepage and smells faintly of old sun. Where lime belongs, it keeps its chalk and the modest boast of staying at one bridge. A mason has left a lift bosser little proud square where tongs once bit to remind the block of its journey. Children run fingers over it and learn that weight obeyed here before feet did. At another, on the downstream face, a small swallow has plastered a nest under the third stone from the cap. The swallow knows about Lee and praises the engineer by existence alone. Floods have their parliament after they leave. Silt drapes the verges like brown velvet. The road answers with shovels and baskets, walking in pairs, cross drains, having swallowed too much, cough into pits. The wardens set brush fences along the worst wind lanes. So next year, silt lands usefully where the levee wants to grow a little taller. A reed bundle staked at a bend teaches the current to curve the way a finger teaches a page to turn. The relay keeper ledger gets a line when a structure changes state. Drain at Poplar Mile cleared scupper lips trued. 2 culvert lintels reset. Brush fence added east of ford. He adds no adjectives. The road is not a poem. It is legibility set to ground. At dusk, a travelling foreman runs a palm along the parapet and feels the cold leave his hand. He knows which stone was replaced last week by the sound it makes to his knuckles. He knows the camber's honesty by the way water leaves a boot print. He knows the ditch grade by how quickly a floating blade of grass loses interest. He scratches good on his wax and smooths it with the warm side of his knife, as if not to embarrass the bridge by singing. When dawn returns and rain decides whether to exist, nothing spectacular will occur. Water will choose the ditch scuppers, will offer, culverts will remember, stepstones will be boo, a cutwater will part an entire tree with no raised voice, a rake will comb, a boy will broom, a warden will tick, a mason will press one more wedge and hear ting, a wheel will find middle again. The bridge will say stones quiet sentence. The drain will say roads. The river will say yes in the grammar of through. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The royal road does not walk alone. It is always carrying company. By dusk, caravans drift into relay towns like processions that never practiced but somehow keep step. Camels fold their knees at the yard's edge, making the soft groan of animals that know more about patience than men. Donkeys, honest about their limits, shuffle toward a trough where water tastes faintly of lime. But horses, not for burdens but for speed, stand tethered under the eaves, stamping once as if to sign attendance. The inn-yard is not large, but it behaves like a square of order. A row of reed mats waits along the wall. Pillows of felt are stacked in a corner for those with copper to spare. A firepot sits in the middle, clay-bellied coals hidden under a roof of ash. When a guest nudges it awake, the flame answers politely. Above, the smoke finds its path through a gap in the beam's habit, not accident. Guests share the yard without ceremony. A merchant of dyed wool spreads a cloth and shakes out a bale that smells of sheep and sea together. A pair of soldiers lean their spears against the wall and untie their sandals in silence. Their coin is weight, their rest is light. A scribe from Sardis unrolls his writing board, copies 2 names from memory into wax, and closes it with a thumb as if tucking in a child. No one calls attention. The road likes quiet arrivals. Meals are assembled, not served. A pot of lentils murmurs over the pot. Each guest adds a scoop of barley from his own sack, a pinch of coriander, a sprig of mint. Bread circles the yard like currency, torn and shared without tally. Someone produces dates from a leather pouch and presses one into each palm before he eats his own. A boy pours sherbet, honey and vinegar with a thought of rosinto wooden cups that have been mended twice with bronze stitches. Each drink tastes of many hands and of nobody's boast. News travels here the way weather does. Not announced, only mentioned. A trader says the ford west of Arbela prefers mornings now. A soldier mutters that the satrap's men have been counting olives near the border. A woman mentions that her sister saw a lion track near the dry gully. Another laughs and says it was probably just a big dog. None of it is shouted, but all of it stays. By morning, each rider will carry not just a pouch, but a rumour shaped into cents. In a corner, the innkeeper keeps his 2 ledgers, one on wax, one in memory. Wax records who paid a copper for mats, who for fodder, who for a bowl of stew. Memory records who spoke kindly, who kept shoes tidy at the threshold, who lifted a jar without asking. Memory lasts longer. When a man comes again, the keeper greets him not with welcome back, but with your place is ready, and the traveller feels taller than his coin. Outside the walls, the caravan settles like a village. Camels huddle nose to tail, their bells muffled with cloths so they don't invent gossip. Drivers rake a shallow pit, light a second fire, and roast onions until the lane smells of sweet smoke. A child ties 3 reeds into a triangle and calls it a toy boat, launching it into the ditch where it sails bravely before lodging against a culvert. The men watch and laugh softly, not at the child, but at the ditch for thinking itself a sea. In the gallery of the inn, where beams meet roof, sparrows make their last arguments before sleep. Cats patrol for crumbs and recognition. One curls beside the warm wall where fire's breath seeps through. The other stalks the shadows like a night guard with fur. Both are fed without being named. A bowl of milk appears and disappears as if by ritual. When the lamps are pinched to coins, the inn-yard falls into layers of rest. Some guests murmur half prayers, half lists. Others roll themselves in cloaks and become part of the wall. A courier lies with the pouch under his arm, not for fear, but for habit. He sleeps on his side, so the weight feels like a hand. The innkeeper tips the firepot's ash over its red heart, leaving only embers the size of lentils. The night grows into its full grammar of quiet. By morning, the caravan will stir in practiced sequence. Camels will groan, ropes will not, saddlebags will find their balance, guests will rise without speeches, fold mats, rinse faces, pour water into thirsty earth as if feeding it back. The innkeeper will smooth his wax with the warm side of a knife, erasing yesterday into readiness. The firepot will yawn awake with 1 reed and 2 breaths. News will drift outward on sandals and hooves, carrying yesterday's rumours into tomorrow's certainties. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The royal road sleeps lightly, guarded by men who measure their steps the way a scribe measures lines. At intervals of a parasang, a low watch station squats by the roadside mud brick walls, a flat roof, a fire pit in the yard, and a single bar across the door that knows its socket. By day, it looks unimpressive. By night, it becomes a hinge between villages, keeping silence aligned. The watchfire is never large. A brazier burns tamarisk roots, trimmed so flames do not chatter. Smoke rises in a thin, dark rope, visible to the next station when the air is clear. Each post watches the smoke of its neighbour like a reader follows a margin note quiet acknowledgement, not alarm. If trouble ever comes, the fire learns a different grammar. 1 flare for guest, 2 for delay, 3 for danger. Tonight, it speaks only the word present. The sentries keep a slow rhythm. 2 men walk the parapet where the road curves near a gully, sandals softened with felt. One carries a torch bound in flax and pine resin, but he holds it low, so its light behaves like a lamp, not a banner. The other carries a staff wrapped in leather. Tapping the ground once every 20 paces the tap is a reassurance to both men and ground. When they change direction, they swap tools, as if to remind themselves that safety is shared. In their lodge, a board of wax records the night in a few narrow lines. 2 caravans passed westbound, quiet one courier exchanged at the station. A wolf's cry near the north slope. All lamps correct. The scribe's reed stylus writes faintly, the letters shallow, because wax prefers humility at night. In the morning, these notes will be copied to clay for the satrap's archive. The wax will be smoothed again and become a blank field, ready for the next night's arithmetic. Every hour, the watch tests the gate bar. They lift it, lower it, listen to the wooden toque. That means the groove is true. A loose bar is a story waiting to happen, and stories are the enemy of sleep. They check the lamp niche above the door. Flame coin-sized, wick-trimmed oil a spoon deep. They pass their hands along the cords that secure fodder and saddles in the yard, not because they distrust, but because order is a comfort. Sometimes they walk the ditch that runs beside the road. They lean over the culvert mouths, hearing water move in its stone tunnel, checking that silt has not grown ambitious. At the milepost, one sentry touches the carved groove with a finger, a habit more than a duty, just enough to remember distance. The stone gives back coolness, and the man straightens with the small nod that says the road has not moved under us. Visitors at night are few. A late trader with a donkey shows his pass. A leather slip with 3 seals hanging like a garland. The sentry feels the clay with his thumb, counts them by texture rather than sight, and nods him through. A courier arrives, leading a horse that is half tired, half brave. His pouch bears a lead seal, still cool in the night air. The keeper checks it under the torch, matches the mark to his own sample, and writes a single dot on the wax board. Nothing more is needed. The dot says truth has been witnessed. If danger wanders, it is usually small, a jackal barking too near the stables. A stranger pretending his pass once held another seal, a spark rising from a careless brazier. Each is answered with the same quiet verbs. Close, check, cover, move on. Violence is the road's last language, and it prefers not to speak it. Most nights, the loudest sound is the rustle of reeds on the slope or the clink of a jug settling back in its cradle. When midnight leans into morning, the station grows still enough to listen to itself. The torch smoke stands upright, a black brushstroke on pale sky. The wax board holds its 4 neat lines. The gate bar rests in its groove, with a dignity earned by repetition. The men roll themselves in cloaks, one still awake, one half dreaming, both trusting the brazier to finish its modest work. The road lies across the dark like a straight sentence, dotted with lamps and commas of smoke. At dawn, the watch will smooth the wax, empty the ash, lift the bar, and hand the road back to the couriers and caravans who think they own it. The truth is, the road belongs to the arrangements that keep it safe. Smoke seen, lamps trimmed, seals read, dots pressed. Travellers pass through. The grammar remains. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The royal road does not end only in markets. It ends in offices where numbers sit straighter than soldiers. In the satrap's hall of records, the air smells of reed mats, lamp oil, and clay that has recently given up its shine. The walls are plain, but the shelves are busy. Rows of tablets in wooden jackets, each wearing a small slip of red paint that says who, when, what owed, what sent. At a long bench, scribes sit shoulder to shoulder, reeds sharpened to the width of a fingernail. A tray of damp clay tablets rests near their knees. Each scribe takes one, smooths it with the heel of his palm, and begins 3 bags of barley from the fields by the lower canal, seal of the surveyor, carried west by caravan, arrived with seals intact at the gate of Arbulate. The lines are narrow, the wedges small, because the clay must hold more than words. Measurements, witnesses, routes, and dates. Beside them, clerks of paper copy summaries onto imported sheets that smell faintly of starch and burnish. Paper is lighter than clay, swifter to carry, but not yet trusted alone. So clay is body, paper is shadow, and both travel together in a pouch sealed with lead. The satrap himself sits on a low dais, not in majesty but in visibility. Petitioners step forward with folded leaves or clay lumps still moist from their road. A farmer shows a tablet with his boundary drawn in grooves. A merchant presents a tally of dye jars ferried past 3 weirs. A widow offers a petition for remission of tax after a flood carried her field away. Each is read aloud, the satrap listening with still hands. He answers not with speeches, but with directions. Copy this into the roll of dues. Add a note of delay. ISSUE grain from the storehouse. Record the debt against flood, not family. On the far wall, a large board hangs where tokens of wood are slotted by district. Each peg holds a carved disc marked with a stylus scratch. One for canals, one for horses, one for granaries. When a region delivers, the disc slides 1 notch downward, telling the same truth clay will remember later. A boy moves them quietly while the scribes work. He has learned that small pieces of wood can hold an empire's pulse. The treasury adjoining is modest in appearance, careful in habit. Bags of silver coin and measured grain rest under seal. Each bag wears a tag of clay with the emblem of the satrapy pressed by a cylinder. Scales weight level, arms ending in lions' heads that grin or frown if balance falters. The inspector sets a coin on one pan, a weight on the other, and listens for stillness. When stillness comes, he writes 1 wedge in the margin of a tablet and presses a tiny seal that means checked. Messengers from the relay houses step through at intervals, their pouches dusty, but their seals unbroken. The keeper of records cracks the clay or the lead, reads the inside aloud, then sets the seal aside in a bowl of past days. The broken bulla lie like small brown teeth, each still legible if memory must be tested. Later, they will be ground to powder and made into slip for repairing cracks in the cistern Wallies truth becoming tomorrow's plaster. When the day leans into evening, the scribes rise one by one, placing their last tablets onto racks that let air dry them evenly. To clerk counts. 32 today, 6 for land dues, 12 for stipends, 7 for repairs, 4 for remission, 3 for dispute. He presses the sum into one tablet with larger wedges and sets it under a weight, so the tally itself becomes memory hardened. The satrap leaves by the side door, sandals carrying dust of both market and office. Behind him, the lamps on the shelves shrank to coins. The door bar drops into its groove with the familiar toke. In the darkness, tablets cool, seals rest, and numbers continue their work without needing eyes. The provinces are remembered not by shouting, but by accounting. Barley measured, silver weighed, boundaries drawn, repairs recorded. By morning, the clerks will smooth fresh clay, cut new reeds, fill the first lines with names and measures, and begin again. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. Beyond the Royal Road's mileposts lie the villages that give it purpose. At dusk, their fields settle into stripes of colour-brown furrows still warm from the plough, green shoots of barley making orderly rows, canals catching the last of the sun in long, bright seams. The air smells of wet earth and straw smoke, the twin perfumes of a field that has worked and a hearth that is waiting. Each village is a cluster of mud brick houses, their walls combed smooth with palm ribs, their roofs flat enough to hold jars, mats, and sleeping mats when summer insists. Doors turn on stone sockets that grind softly, and thresholds remember 1,000 sandals. In the courtyards, jars lean against walls, mouths stoppered with clay, and sealed with thumbprints. Some hold grain, some oil, some only water waiting for tomorrow's thirst. The fields are arranged by water, not by fences. Canals run like sentences, branching into smaller laterals that carry the same grammar: flow, rest, feed. At the head of each canal stands a sluice gate, a simple board of tamarisk wedged into slots. At dusk, a farmer lifts the board the width of 3 fingers, water size forward, glittering under the moon. Children chase its front edge, toes splashing where it breaks the soil, and laugh as if they had just invented irrigation themselves. Each plot is measured not in acres, but in ropes and furrows. A rope is stretched from post to post. Knots mark the cubits. A plumb stone at the end ensures honesty. Furrows answer the rope by becoming parallel, teaching barley to stand like soldiers but eat like neighbours. Every so often, a boundary stone rises short, blunt, with signs cut shallow, a sheaf, a wedge, a star. At night, the stones cool faster than the ground. Farmers touch them when passing, as if to be sure both land and promise are still firm. The ox plough rests by the village edge, its yoke hung on a peg, its share cleaned of clinging soil. Tomorrow, when the rope is stretched again, the plough will lean into the ground with the patience of beasts that know their duty. Tonight, the oxen chew straw, their jaws moving in time with crickets. A boy rubs their necks where the yoke leaves marks, speaking to them as though they were uncles. Oxen answer in silence, but the silence is kind. Granaries keep their geometry. Low round bins plastered smooth inside, each with a narrow mouth just wide enough for a scoop. The mouths are sealed with clay discs pressed flat and marked with the house seal. Inside, barley sleeps in layers, dry and temperate, guarded by a cat who claims the whole village as its satrapy. From the roof of one granary, the road itself is visibly pale line drawn across the land, a reminder that grain here becomes stipends there, and numbers in the satrap's hall. Evening meals mirror the fields, lentils and onions stewed with coriander. Bread pulled from the tanner, stamped with the mark of the household. A jug of beer mild enough for children, frothy enough for labourers. Women spread mats in the courtyard. Elders take the shadowed side. Children chase fireflies between bowls. A visitor is always given the best portion of bread, torn by the host and handed with two hands. Hospitality is a law older than kings. When the moon climbs, the irrigation gates are lowered again. Boards slide into their grooves. The water slows, pools, and then grows still. The fields glisten for a while, then drink, then lie quiet as sleeping beasts. In the village, lamps are pinched smaller, children curl on mats, elders hum low songs about floods and harvests past. Dogs take corners by habit, cats resume patrol. The night does not ask for drama. It asks only that the rope, the plough, the sluice, the boundary stone, the granary seal, the furrow, and the grain all wake tomorrow in the same order, and they will. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The royal road does not run only on stone and dust. It runs on trust, and trust has its stations just as horses do, at bends, crossings, and gateways. Small shrines wait modest alcoves built of brick or dressed stone, shaded by tamarisk or fig, their walls whitewashed until even moonlight looks at home there. Inside, a niche holds what the road believes in. Sometimes it is a carved figure king with bow, a god seated on a square stool, a lion who pretends to sleep. Sometimes only a stone rubbed smooth by generations of palms, its surface shining with oil and attention. Before it lie crumbs of bread, a cup of beer gone flat, a handful of barley, a little jug of water stopped with clay. The offerings are not grand. They are reminders. The road is for sharing, not stealing. Travellers stop, not for spectacle, but for assurance. A caravan leader presses his hand to the niche and whispers nothing. Silence itself is the prayer. A soldier rests the butt of his spear against the threshold and bows his head as if listening for correction. But a mother unties her child's sandal, dusts the sole, and sets it back on, making the road a little kinder to him. These are not ceremonies. They are habits, and habits are stronger than decrees. Beside the shrine stands the oath stone, waist-high, flat-topped, cut with shallow grooves like veins. When disputes arrive, two cousins arguing where a rope should stretch, a merchant claiming more jars delivered than a porter admits the oathstone waits. Each man touches water poured from the shrine's jug, places a hand on the grooves, and speaks his truth. No thunder follows, no lightning approves, but witnesses nod, a scribe notes, and the road gains another line in its ledger. The stone keeps memory, and memory is enough. Clay tablets from such hearings rest in the satrap's records. Short, factual, dotted with names and seals. By the milepost near the tamarisk, in the presence of the oathstone, such hands such spoke. So-and-so replied, witnesses agreed, judgment cord to be stretched where it was yesterday. The judgment is not glory, it is correction. The stone stands afterward, unexcited, waiting for the next pair of hands. Some shrines guard more than honesty. By mountain roads, niches hold lamps kept by herdsmen. Oil is poured in by passing hands, a wick trimmed by whoever has a pin. At night, the flame coins its light for strangers who cannot risk stumbling. The lamp has no owner. It belongs to the road. Yet it is always burning because everyone believes someone else will need it, and that belief keeps it alive. Seals and oaths overlap here. A courier presenting his pouch places it for a moment on the shrine's threshold before mounting again. The gesture is not law, but it becomes law when everyone repeats it. Merchants swear by their own seals at the stone, pressing them into wet clay tags to show that their words carry weight outside their mouths. Once dried, these tags hang from a cord in the shrine's wall, a small museum of promises kept. At harvest season, shrines bloom with garlands plaited reeds, dyed wool, strings of figs dried in the sun. At flood season, they wear mud on their lower stones, a reminder that water claims everything first and people only later. At caravan season, they are dusted daily by passing feet. Their beauty is never planned, only accumulated. Children treat the shrine as part of the road's furniture. They drop pebbles into the jug, laugh at the hollow plink, chase each other around the niche. Elders smile and let them, because play is also a form of offering. At night, a jackal might sit in the shadow and listen, but even it does not disturb the crumbs. The road teaches manners to beasts as well as to men. When dawn comes, shrine and oathstone look exactly as they did yesterday. Oil damp at the lip, crumbs dry on the ledge, grooves cool and waiting. Travellers stretch their cords, wagons roll their wheels. Couriers exchange their pouches, merchants count their jars, and the shrine watches without interfering. Its job is not to command, but to remain. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The first light does not strike the rodent. finds it already awake. Dew gathers in the shallow ruts where ox carts once pressed their memory. Mileposts stand like blunt candles, their grooves darkened by damp. A cock crows in a village just out of sight, and the sound rolls down the road's shoulders like water poured from a jar. The royal road takes no notice of the noise. It has heard thousands, and each one has meant morning. In the relay house, the bar lifts with its small wooden toque, a sound of duty rather than drama. Horses stamp once, shake out manes, accept saddles they have worn 100 times before. A courier fastens the pouch at his belt, feels the seal cool against his thigh, and mounts with the calm of someone who trusts the road more than himself. The keeper smooths yesterday's wax tablet with the warm side of his knife, erasing all but the groove where truth once lay. The board shines like a fresh page. Villagers stir in their usual arithmetic. Doors grind in stone sockets. Women sweep dust into the ditches that love dust best. Children fetch jars from canals that remember to flow, not flood. Farmers lift the boards from sluices by finger widths, sending silver streams into furrows drawn straight by rope. Oxen chew slowly, preparing to become movement again. A boy touches a boundary stone, cool with night, reassured that land and promise still exist in the same place. Caravans untie their knots, camels rise awkwardly, bells muffled with cloth, donkeys shrugged into their loads. Merchants tie leather straps with practiced knots that forgive but never forget. In the inn-yard embers coax flame from ash. A pot of barley begins to mutter. Bread stamps are pressed into dough. Cups of sour milk pass hand to hand. A traveller yawns, bites his bread, and begins a story about weather. His neighbour finishes the story for him. News is always finished by someone else. On the ridges, watchfires shrink into smoke-thin brushes against a pale sky. Sentries close their wax tablets, write a last line to caravans west. No trouble. Lamps corrected stretch out their backs. A torch is doused in sand. Its resin smell lingers. The ditch at the foot of the gully has been cleared in the night. Water passes politely, leaving silt where it was invited, not where it was not. Shrines and oath stones greet the day with unchanged faces. Oil films the surface of the niche lamp. Crumbs lie exactly as they were given. Grooves wait for hands that will swear by them. A boy pauses long enough to toss a pebble into the jug, laughing when it sings. The road accepts the sound as another kind of prayer. By mid-morning, dust begins its upward drift, a pale veil rising behind hooves and wheels, softening the horizon. Mile by mile, the road knits the empire together. Posts counted, drains behaving, bridges remembering their arches, seals cooling into certainty, letters travelling folded and safe. A messenger looks ahead and sees only a line, straight where straight is kind, bent where bending spares water or stone. The road is both map and promise, never loud, always short. By night, the same dust will have settled in the ditches, lamps will have learned coin-sized flames again, horses will lie on straw, and scribes will press wedges into clay, and the day after, the same. The King's Road does not boast of greatness. It offers continuity. Step after step, wheel after wheel, oath after oath, seal after seal. Provinces remain related. Distances become familiar. Empires endure not because of armies, but because a road keeps its manners. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort.